Part 34. I Can See the Laws of Things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 331. Two eyes with strange purple light illuminated the bottomless abyss full of darkness. Lin En, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, slowly stood up. He raised his head, and his purple eyes looked up at the sky. At this moment, the whole world was in his sight. That huge palm, Chen Daoming, whose soul began to burn, and the panicked faces in Zhu. Is it finally done? After muttering in a low voice, Lin En took a step forward. His figure disappeared in an instant. At the same time, a circle of invisible flames filled around Chen Daoming's body, and his strength was greatly improved. Endless power and space power gathered on his right fist. On his face, a look of pain also appeared, and beads of sweat kept flowing from his forehead. The power gained by burning the soul requires a huge price. And his strength will be doubled. Chen Daoming endured the pain and punched the huge palm. But at this moment, Lin En appeared beside Chen Daoming. He stretched out a finger and blocked Chen Daoming's punch. The next moment, before Chen Daoming had time to react, his fist that had just attacked was easily blocked by Lin En's finger. At the same time, the flames on his soul that had been burning were extinguished in an instant, and the injured soul began to heal rapidly. On the other hand, Lin En's finger was not scratched at all. Chen Daoming suddenly looked forward at this time. He saw Lin En's finger that was fine, and the familiar face. Lin En. He took the attack head on. Lin En actually. Nothing happened at all. And at this time, Lin En's shining eyes also looked at Chen Daoming. A gentle smile slowly climbed up his face, and he said with a chuckle. Chen Daoming. An enemy of this kind. It's not worth it for you to do this. Although Lin En asked Chen Daoming to protect the Zhu domain, if it was in exchange for Chen Daoming's life, Lin En would definitely not agree. Chen Daoming was speechless for a moment, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching a few times. Although he was very moved. But this enemy is a little scary. Lin En, don't underestimate the enemy. This giant hand came from the earth. It's probably the palm of some ancient strong man. After taking 2 deep breaths, he just said a few words. But Lin En's figure had disappeared in front of him, and his eyes immediately began to look around. When he saw Lin En again, Lin En had already appeared right under that palm. Lin En's body was less than half a meter away from the huge palm. With cold eyes, he looked at the palm that was exerting huge pressure on the space barrier of Zhu domain. He raised a fist and punched the huge palm with force. The next moment, Lin En's fist came into contact with the huge palm. Boom! In an instant, there was a sound like the collapse of the sky and the crack of the earth, and the huge force exploded, sweeping everything in the surrounding universe. The space barrier covering Zhu domain was instantly turned into countless tiny fragments. Countless meteorites passing by Zhu domain turned into powder smaller than sesame seeds. The black hole that appeared nearby was directly shattered and disappeared. Outside Zhu domain, a huge hole appeared in the palm of the huge fist. The entire palm was blasted into ashes by Lin En's punch, and even the remaining few fingers were quickly annihilated. Soon, those few fingers were completely scattered. Floating in the sky, Chen Daoming stared at the sky above Zhu domain in amazement. Plop! 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 His heartbeat became extremely strong at this moment, as if it was about to jump out of his chest, and his mind became a mess. That palm. It was solved. One punch? Just one punch, and the palm was solved. Lin En after 3 years of seclusion. What kind of realm is his strength? He faced that palm in person and knew how powerful that palm that was only concerned with crushing Zhu domain was. At this time, Lin En's figure appeared beside Chen Daoming again. He looked at the somewhat dazed Chen Daoming, chuckled and slowly said. I said it. Enemy of this kind. It's not worth burning your soul for. After hearing this, Chen Daoming just looked at Lin En. He was speechless about Lin En's words and didn't know what to say in response. For him, even if he burns his soul, he may not be able to defeat the enemy. But under Lin En's hand, he couldn't even push through. This made him doubt his life. After being silent for a few seconds, Lin En turned his head and looked at the location of the earth, with light blooming in his eyes. If I'm not wrong, this palm is just a temptation for us from a certain awakened power on the earth. I'm afraid the real crisis will come after this palm. Chen Daoming slowly returned to normal at this moment, and he nodded in agreement. The Earth's expansion has completely stopped recently. We don't know what state the Earth is in at this moment. But since this is the last expansion of the Earth, I'm afraid all the powerful men who slept in the old era have woken up. The Earth is now absolutely in chaos. At this moment, Lin En and Chen Daoming fell into silence in a tacit understanding. They both knew very well what the Earth like this meant to the Kyushu territory. It took a few seconds for the two of them to return to normal. Lin En used the law of space to repair the broken space obstacles that had been bombarded and enveloped the Kyushu domain. This space barrier protecting the Kyushu territory has become stronger than before. And at the same time, in the earth, a voice full of majesty echoed somewhere between heaven and earth. The forces floating in the sky. Destroy it for me. The next moment, 4 voices replied simultaneously. As you command, my lord. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 332. The voice full of majesty, after seeing countless armies constantly leaving the earth and surrounding the Jiuzhu region. Then he deliberately lowered his voice again and said, the natives of this era are quite interesting. I actually smashed my tentative attack with one punch. Let the 4 of them try it out in detail first. The strength of that human. Then decide how to deal with the natives of this era. After sighing these words, the voice fell silent again. Above the earth, there are countless dense figures, leaving the earth quickly. The cosmic rays shining from the sky are all covered by these large shadows, and the bright ground seems a little dim. The countless figures leaving the earth have also attracted the attention of all forces existing on the earth. Then there are voices one after another. Did the Void Lord take the lead in attacking the natives of this era? Let's wait and see whether the natives of this last era are qualified to participate in the competition. Did the damn Void Lord take the lead in attacking me? If they occupy that place, it will not be good news for me. The people who said this are the most powerful rulers on earth today. When Lin En was in seclusion and the earth's spiritual energy was revived for the second time, the pattern of the earth changed dramatically and was ruled by 4 ancient strongmen who woke up from their slumber. They are the Void Lord, the Immortal, the Court of Destiny, and the Court of God. These 4 forces check and balance each other and maintain a strange stable status quo. They all want to destroy each other, but they cannot ensure that they can completely destroy all of each other at once. So they keep stability by default and no large-scale battles will occur. At the same time, Lin En and Chen Daoming did not leave. They flew high in the sky at the border of Jiuzhu territory, looking at the earth that had become very large. Lin En looked at the earth calmly, with light flashing in his purple eyes. His sight passed through the endless void and looked at the extremely large number of the Void Lord's subordinates who were attacking them. Here they come, Lin En said in a somewhat cold tone. At this moment, the Void Lord's subordinates advanced faster. They crossed the void and came to the side of Jiuzhu territory. The huge army dispersed and occupied the surrounding areas of Jiuzhu territory, completely surrounding Jiuzhu territory. In front of the surrounding armies, there stood a tall leader. Chen Daoming's face became more solemn in an instant, and he frowned. He felt a strong pressure from the 4 leaders. None of the 4 leaders was weaker than him. At least they were all semi-god level strengths. These four leaders are all giant crocodiles who are like the abyss demon god and are subordinate to the Lord of the Void. And the enemies behind these four leaders are at the lowest level of the god of law. In the camp of the ancient strong, the god of law strongmen are as numerous as passers-by who are just passing by. These enemies are the troops that originally belonged to those giant crocodiles. Lin En, what should we do? Chen Daoming couldn't think of a solution for a while, and he subconsciously asked Lin En. At the same time, Lin En's eyes had already swept through the enemies who surrounded the Zhuzhu area. But his expression did not change at all, and he still maintained that calm look. Lin En glanced at Chen Daoming lightly, and then said in a calm tone, "Don't worry. I have already prepared for the arrival of this day." After speaking, Lin En waved his left hand gently, and a space crack was directly torn out. "Wait for me to come back." He turned around and stepped into the space crack in one step, disappearing from the eyes of tens of millions of enemies. One of the four ancient giant crocodiles looked at the scene and couldn't help feeling a little funny. He didn't know what Lin En wanted to do. The giant crocodile laughed loudly. "Ridiculous human beings. You actually ran away by yourself. It's really boring." The subordinates behind him also echoed. "Just like the humans of our time. When they encounter danger, they think about escaping. My lord, give the order and destroy them." The giant crocodile nodded lightly, stretched out a claw and pointed at Chen Daoming, and roared. "Do it! Kill all the natives of this era." The enemies surrounding the Zhuzhu domain all took action again at this moment. Due to the expansion of the Earth, the entire universe has changed. The current universe has become a property suitable for human survival. Whether it is the existence on the Earth or the people in the Zhuzhu domain, they have begun to survive normally in the cosmic vacuum near the Earth. And at this moment, the space rift that Lin En had torn open before suddenly became hundreds of times larger. Lin En's figure also slowly walked out of the crack in this space. He entered the space crack and tore it apart from the inside, making it grow to this extent. Chen Daoming looked at the space crack next to him that exuded the power of space laws. His eyes widened a little and he blinked dryly. This space crack. It's so big. Just for a moment. Did he tear out such a huge space crack? This power of control over space. How powerful is it? The corner of Lin En's mouth curled up, and there was a rare look of expectation in his eyes. He chuckled and said, "The two armies I selected before seclusion. Finally it has a use." The next second, the Void Lord's troops were infinitely close to the Kyushu territory. The enemies showed their sharp teeth one by one, and their murderous intent continued to grow. At the same time, in the huge space channel torn open by Lin En, figures floated out of it. The two people at the front are surprisingly Daoyi and Helen. Behind them are the 9,999 selected children who were engraved with the top life will by Lin En himself, as well as those children with outstanding talents and suitable for practicing the techniques of the fairy era, who were inscribed by Lin En with his own hands. A huge army of immortal spirits bestowed with martial arts. Like Lin En, these two armies have been training hard in the past 3 years. Except for some necessary rest, no one has any intention of relaxing. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 333. The spatial cracks torn open by Lin continued to spread. After spreading for a few seconds, the space crack became extremely large. Everyone in the two armies also came to Lin En and Chen Daoming from the training ground through the space rift. Daoyi and Helen subconsciously looked at Lin En as soon as they appeared. After 3 years of hard training, Helen, Daoyi, and others have grown a lot. The two of them have now become warriors who have experienced countless wars and are only loyal to Lin En. Helen, who originally had a somewhat childish look on her face, now had the greenness on her face completely gone, replaced by a firm and cold-blooded look. In the past 3 years, she used the law of power and speed engraved on her body by Lin En to kill countless abyss demons. Even many of the lords of the abyss were killed by her. Maid Fako was killed by Helen. Now Helen's strength has reached a very high level. Even if Chen Daoming faces Helen, it is still unknown who will win and who will lose. Boom. Helen knelt down directly in the void in the direction of Lin En. At the same time, Dao Yi also made the same move. The two of them lowered their heads, looked down, and shouted loudly. Helen, see Chief Lin. Dao Yi meets Chief Lin En. The next moment, before Lin En could say anything, the army soldiers who came out of the cracks in space all looked at Lin En. Boom. 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 One after another, they knelt on the ground, and all of them also lowered their heads and looked down at themselves. Call. After taking a deep breath in unison, at the same time, they shouted with the loudest voice. All the fairy army meets Commander Lin En. All Kyushu guardsmen meet Chief Lin En. Lin En looked at the soldiers kneeling on the ground with a faint smile, and slowly said, "Get up." Immediately afterwards, Helen, Dao Yi and the two huge armies all stood up. They all held their heads high and looked at Lin En with firm eyes, waiting for Lin En's order. At the same time, the monsters that are constantly approaching the Kyushu territory have now infinitely approached the Kyushu territory. The crocodile who had previously thought that Lin En was the escaping crocodile couldn't help but feel a sense of surprise when he saw the scene of 10,000 people surrendering. That guy didn't run away. This choice is really stupid. If he had escaped, he might still have survived. As he spoke, a crazy and bloodthirsty smile appeared on this Zetsu's face, and his forward speed became faster. At this time, Lin En glanced at the monsters that were approaching infinitely, and then said in an extremely cold voice, "Destroy those enemies. This is your first battle. Behave." At this moment, Helen and others seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They rushed out of the border of the Kyushu territory with excitement on their faces and attacked the incoming enemies. At the same time, Lin En also took a step forward, and his entire figure completely disappeared in an instant. When he appeared again, he had already appeared at the height of the universe outside the Kyushu territory. Looking down at the four leaders, murderous intent burst out in his eyes. Helen and the others are not a match for these four guys yet. This is their first battle. It's important to build confidence. At the same time, it gives those who are watching all this secretly a chance to be shocked. Lin En, who knows everything, will also take action to participate in this battle. Thinking of this, Lin En directly waved his hand, and the heavenly roulette in his body was activated. His purple eyes flashed, and the power of the space law was activated in an instant. The void of the universe, which is millions of miles away, was shrouded by the laws of space and began to twist violently. The vacuum inside seemed to have turned into pieces of chaos, as if it were an illusion. The figures of the four giant crocodiles of the era disappeared from the place in an instant and appeared in front of Lin En. They didn't even have time to react before they were forcibly moved here by Lin En. The four giant crocodiles frowned and looked at Lin, with a flash of displeasure in their eyes. They didn't like this passive feeling. The law of space? It seems that the demon god of the abyss was killed by you. Interesting. Are there any of these natives who can master the power of law? If you kill him and take back the law of space, the monarch will definitely be very happy. Just when these four era giants were about to take action, Lin En said coldly, "Do it." Four era giants. Unexpectedly Lin En didn't have the slightest fear. Arrogant guy. At the same time, it's just looking for death. The next moment, these four giants of the era launched an attack on Lin En. At this time, the two armies led by Helen and Dao Yi were also advancing rapidly in the universe. They have come into contact with the monsters under the Void Lord. The war between the Zhu Domain army and the Void Lord's army broke out at this moment. Boom! In this void, fierce explosions sounded from all directions. Flames, thunder and lightning, ice and snow, wind and rain, and all kinds of top elemental attacks all broke out at this moment. The monsters attacked had no resistance at all. They fell one by one under these attacks and fell to the bottom of the universe. At the same time, various skills and magical powers of the fairy era appeared, palm techniques, leg techniques, and qigong, all attacking the monsters. Dei held the Xuanhuan mother sword in his hand, and thousands of sword chi would be released when he waved his hand. The sword chi quickly crisscrossed the universe, and a sword chi cut through, which meant the death of a monster. Helen kept shuttling in the universe, and her two white fists hit out again and again. After each punch, a monster would explode into pieces. Only Chen Daoming remained in the Zhu area. He stared at everything that happened in the universe in amazement. The scene of the monsters, the weakest of which were at the level of the god of magic, being easily killed made him dare not believe it at all. Lin An's army. It's so powerful. How did Lin An train them? In just 3 years. They have grown to this point. It's incredible. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 334. Chen Daoming had never thought that such a thing would happen in the current Zhu domain. The strong man who could easily kill the enemy of the god of law was actually mass-produced in Lin An's hands. Seeing this one-sided situation, Chen Daoming reluctantly retracted his gaze. Huh! He let out a long breath, and exclaimed in an extremely unexpected tone. Although the number is inferior, the quality is very high. Then, Chen Daoming also took action and joined the battlefield. With the addition of this demigod-level strong man, the situation began to be one-sided. While this war was going on, in the universe void just above the Zhu domain, the battle between Lin An and the 4 era giant crocodiles also broke out. The 4 era giant crocodiles launched attacks on Lin An from 4 different directions. The 4 figures moved quickly in this dark and cold universe, and their attacks quickly approached Lin An. These 4 era giant crocodiles are also the complements of the law, namely the law of fire, the law of water, the law of thunder, and the law of wind. The laws of the 4 elements. The fire dragon that stretches for millions of miles, the water vortex comparable to a black hole, the lightning that can split the space, and the strong wind that can easily change the trajectory of a small planet. These 4 terrible forces attacked Lin An at the same time, leaving less than 1 meter away from Lin An's body. But Lin An was floating there, standing motionless. His eyes were not on the 4 era giant crocodiles, but looking in the direction of the earth. The moment Lin An and the 4 era giant crocodiles started fighting just now, he felt that there were countless powerful eyes, from the direction of the earth, across countless voids, looking here. And among the countless eyes, the power contained in 4 eyes far exceeded the other eyes. Is the earth now controlled by 4 era giant crocodiles? At this moment, Lin An had made a judgment. After that, he retracted his gaze from the earth and looked indifferently at the roaring fire dragon in front of him. That's it? Lin An raised a fist and punched forward lightly. Boom! The fire dragon exploded into countless fragments and quickly extinguished. He shook his head gently, with a hint of sarcasm on his face. Too weak. Then, Lin An threw 3 punches in 3 different directions in an instant. The vortex of water flow collapsed, the lightning of 10,000 meters collapsed, and the angry wind dissipated. The attacks of the 4 era crocodiles were easily resolved by Lin An in an instant. The fire law crocodile, his body straightened in an instant, and he was suspended stiffly in the universe. He stared with his eyes wide open, looking at Lin An with an incredible face. How could this be? The attacks of the 4 elemental laws were actually solved by him with one fist. He was obviously just a native of this era. How could it have such a powerful force? The fire law crocodile had never felt such a shock as if it had lost its soul. The thunder law crocodile, water law crocodile, and wind law crocodile were all in the same state as the fire law crocodile. They were actually unable to come back to their senses for a while. At this moment, Lin An's figure appeared directly beside the fire law crocodile. The fist that looked no different from an ordinary person's fist was raised high by Lin An. The next moment, Lin An's fist slammed down on the body of the fire law crocodile. Boom! A huge hole appeared directly on the body of the fire law crocodile, and most of his body was blasted into debris by Lin An's punch. The remaining body parts were also rapidly dissipating. Then, Lin An disappeared again. 1 second later, the bodies of the 3 giant crocodiles of the Law of Thunder, the Law of Water, and the Law of Wind were all the same as the Law of Fire. Most of their bodies were directly blasted into powder by Lin An's punch. And the only remaining body was also continuing to dissipate. The Law of Fire giant crocodile, which still had a faint thought, looked at Lin An with the only remaining eye full of shock. His pupil was filled with dense learning caused by severe pain. How could it be like this? The 4 complementers were actually killed by a native. This kind of power is already strong enough to be a monarch. The last era. How could such a strong person appear? 1 second later, the bodies of the 4 era giant crocodiles all dissipated. The powerful aura they originally exuded no longer existed. This means that they are completely dead. At the same time, 4 groups of law fluctuations suddenly poured into Lin An's body. The Law of Fire, the Law of Thunder, the Law of Water, and the Law of Wind. Lin An closed his eyes and began to guide these 4 laws, merging them within his body. The 4 laws that flowed into Lin An's body all contained the understanding of the laws by these 4 era giants. At this time, the army led by Helen and Dayi, with the full help of Chen Daoming, became more powerful in attacking those monsters. More and more monsters fell under the attack of Helen and others. Helen and others naturally suffered some injuries in the process. But under the full treatment of more than a dozen warriors with top-level life wheels and the immortal army who practiced healing magic skills, they were not affected much. After a full minute, the power of the 4 laws was integrated into Lin An's body. Lin An's control and understanding of the 4 laws of fire, thunder, water, and wind have been improved again. After slowly opening his tightly closed eyes, Lin An sighed once again, looked in the direction of the earth. At this glance, the entire earth was in his sight. He felt that he was staring at countless people. On the ground, the giant crocodiles of the era exclaimed in surprise. Interesting. Those 4 guys are the mid-level ones under the command of the Lord of the Void. I underestimated the natives of this era this time. Based on the strength shown by this native, he is qualified to be my right-hand man. Humph. It's just killing a few bugs, not worth paying attention to. At the same time, the Lord of the Void also saw this scene. His eyebrows raised slightly, quite surprised. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 335. Not bad. Although the Void Lord said this, his eyes remained calm, as if the death of the 4 law completers was just a trivial matter to him. But this farce should end. The next moment, the Void Lord's eyes, which were full of pressure, slowly closed. A huge Dharma image emerged directly from behind the Void Lord. This Dharma image continued to expand. In just a breath of time, this Dharma image, which was originally about the size of a normal person, had stretched to the point where it was enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the highest mountain. At this point, the expansion of this Dharma image did not stop, and it was continuing to expand. Boom! The Dharma image jumped hard with its legs and rushed out of the edge of the earth, appeared in the universe, and floated in the universe face to face with Lin An. The other three beings with similar status to the Void Lord also focused their attention on Lin En and the Void Lord. Although the power of the Dharma image is somewhat weakened compared to the original body, this native can force the Void Lord to release the Dharma image to fight, which is enough to be proud of. The Void Lord has been sleeping for so many years, but his temper is still so impulsive that he can do such a thing to a group of natives. He is not wrong to do this. In this last era, weakness is a sin. At the same time, Lin En has come to the front of Zhu domain. He put his hands behind his back and looked at the huge Dharma image of the Void Lord floating in the universe. In the purple and black eyes, there emerged a coldness like ice that has not melted for thousands of years. Dharma image. Lin En, who has all the knowledge of the fairy age in his mind, also has a certain degree of understanding of the method of using the Dharma image to fight. After sneering, Lin En's will of heaven in his body turned rapidly, and the mysterious law of space was released directly. Whoosh! Lin En's figure disappeared from the front of Zhu domain in an instant. The next moment, Lin En, with his hands behind his back, appeared right in front of the Void Lord's Dharma image. The height at which he floated was exactly the height of the Void Lord's face. "You are the master behind this group of people?" Lin En asked the Void Lord's Dharma image in a calm tone. The huge mouth on the Void Lord's Dharma image also opened. "So what if it's me?" Two huge pupils filled with contempt stared at Lin En, who was as small as an ant in his eyes. In the heart of the Void Lord, Lin En was already regarded as a dying person, because he had already released his Dharma image. At this time, the murderous intent in Lin En's pupils became extremely strong. "Then, you go to die." As he said that, Lin En raised his fist, and several very powerful laws such as the law of power, the law of speed, the law of fire, the law of thunder, and the law of space all emerged at this moment. Wrapped Lin En's raised fist inside. The flames were burning, the lightning was dancing, and the space was twisting. Looking at Lin En's appearance, a hint of displeasure rose on the face of the Void Lord Dharma. "Just a human. How dare you be so arrogant?" Lin En killed the Abyss Demon, killed his 4 law complementers, and even destroyed his huge army. None of them made him feel too angry or unhappy. But at this moment, Lin En looked like he didn't take him seriously at all. But it made him feel completely angry. But at this moment, Lin En's fist had already hit him fiercely. There was still a distance of dozens of meters between the two sides, but Lin En's fist, at the moment of hitting, seemed to have crossed countless layers of space. The space of dozens of meters twisted and collapsed directly in the blink of an eye, and the flames and lightning flashed. Added a bit of color to this lonely universe. The huge Dharma image of the Void Lord was just about to raise its hand to attack Lin En. But at this moment, the half-raised arm of the Void Lord was directly hit head-on by Lin En's fist that crossed the space. Boom! This huge arm like a mountain was directly blown to pieces by Lin En's punch, turning into countless fragments and swallowed up by the collapsed space around it. The next moment, Lin En threw a second punch, and the huge Dharma image of the Void Lord was wrapped by the power containing several laws. Boom! Just a few seconds later, the huge Dharma image of the Void Lord was annihilated from the vast and boundless universe. At the same time, all the old era giant crocodiles on the earth saw this scene. The Void Lord's Dharma image was destroyed. Too incredible. The human race actually has such a strong person. Although the power of the Void Lord's Dharma image is far less than that of his original body. But this Dharma image alone is much stronger than some of the giant crocodiles of the old era. It is no exaggeration to say that the Void Lord can dominate the world with just this Dharma image. But at this moment, this Dharma image was destroyed by a punch from the natives they thought were not threatening. Like the Void Lord, he was one of the 4 great overlords. A flash of surprise flashed across his gray eyes. He stood up from his cross-legged position on the ground in an instant. He said in a slightly surprised tone. "So strong. The Dharma image of the Void Lord. Couldn't even take the punch from the native? And on that fist, there were so many laws of power. How interesting. At this moment, the Void Lord, who was sitting on the Void Throne with his eyes closed, suddenly had a flush on his face. His tightly closed eyes opened in an instant, and scarlet blood appeared in them. His hands, which were placed on the armrests of the throne, clenched tightly. Very good. The tone of the Void Lord contained a strong anger. The next moment, he stood up from the throne and disappeared in an instant. When the Void Lord appeared again, he had already arrived outside the earth. When he saw Lin En with his own eyes, his body, which was moving faster than the speed of light, finally stopped. The Void Lord stood at the edge of the earth, frowning, looking at Lin En with anger in his eyes, who was also looking at him at the moment. He raised one hand, pointed his palm at Lin En, and a strong force fluctuated on this palm. Without any hesitation, the Void Lord clenched this hand, and then stretched out a finger and hooked it at Lin En. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 336. Let's do it. Natives? The Void Lord also challenged Lin En. At the same time, Lin En's eyes were also looking at the Void Lord entity that appeared in front of him, which looked exactly the same as the Dharma image just now. He shook his head gently, and the indifference in his eyes became more intense. I'll help you. Loser. In the eyes of the Void Lord and other ancient strongmen, Lin En and his companions were just natives of this era. In Lin En's eyes, the Void Lord and his companions who had awakened from the old era were just losers facing the doomsday collapse. The next moment, the battle broke out directly. In Lin En's purple eyes, a strong luster emerged. This time, in addition to using the collapse power of the black eyes, Lin En did not hold back anymore. The moment he saw the Void Lord, he had already judged the strength of the Void Lord. The strength of the two of them was on par. In this situation, if you still hold back, it is tantamount to seeking death. Lin En and the Void Lord disappeared from their original positions at the same time. After less than a breath, both of them appeared from the center between the earth and the Kyushu region. Lin En had already grasped the white sword in his hand, and the sharp white blade slashed towards the Void Lord with force. And the Void Lord clenched his hands into fists, on which two hard scales appeared, and confronted the white sword that Lin En had slashed with force. Bang! An extremely powerful impact force swept in all directions with Lin En and the Void Lord as the center. The endless void in the universe was shattering, and any void that was passed by this impact would explode and shatter in an instant, leaving only a hole. One by one, small meteorites and planets were quickly annihilated into dust and dissipated in the universe. The collision between Lin En and the Void Lord also caused huge fluctuations in the Earth and the Zhu domain. The Zhu domain moved back hundreds of miles, and the space barrier was shattered again. And the disaster appeared on the Earth. The waves were surging, and the volcano erupted violently. At the same time, the bodies of Lin En and the Void Lord were also retreating rapidly. In just a moment, the two were separated by a very long distance again. Lin En had already appeared at the border of the Zhu domain, and a crack appeared on the white sword in his hand. He stood at the border of the Zhu domain, looking at the Void Lord with indifference, but he did not attack again. It is worthy of being the existence behind the Abyss Demon God. It can actually block my full-strength sword. In Lin En's heart, the strength of the Void Lord has been recognized at this moment. At this time, the Void Lord also retreated to the range of the earth. Half of the scales on the palms of the Void Lord's hands had lost their luster due to the impact and fell off his palms. He raised his head and frowned as he looked at Lin En. The pupils that were originally filled with anger were now completely replaced by surprise and surprise. Huff! Huff. Even the breathing of the Void Lord couldn't help but become much heavier. Actually, I still underestimated this native. How is it possible? His strength is so strong? In this last era, the time that the natives can practice is obviously very short. But how could such a level of existence appear? The Void Lord couldn't figure this out. They all had such powerful strength, and it took a very long time, experienced countless disasters, and overcame countless difficulties before they finally grew to this point. Thinking of this, the Void Lord looked at Lin An's eyes, and a touch of calmness slowly emerged. The previous anger because Lin An shattered his Dharma image completely dissipated. The two slightly injured palms also fell by his side again. Huh. After a long breath, the Void Lord turned his head and looked into the earth, and at the same time he said softly, "We can't continue to fight this native. If we continue like this, even if we can win in the end, it will only be a loss for both sides. If those three guys take action at that time, things will get worse." At the same time, on the earth, the immortal, one of the four ancient overlords, who saw all this scene, raised an arc at the corner of his mouth. There was also a playful look in his gray eyes. This native's strength is almost the same as ours. If we unite with him now, we can definitely kill the Void Lord. Behind the immortal, his Dharma image also emerged. The Dharma image quickly grew larger, and as it grew larger, it gradually left the earth. The Void Lord took a deep look at the earth, then turned his head and looked at Lin An again. "Human. I'll remember you. I'll take your life later." After saying that, the Void Lord turned around and prepared to leave. But at this moment, another huge Dharma image appeared beside Lin An. This Dharma image was exactly the Dharma image of the immortal. Lin An glanced at the Dharma image of the immortal and did not do anything else. Because he did not feel any hostility from the Dharma image of the immortal for the time being. At the same time, the Void Lord frowned, and he asked the immortal who was far away from him in a very cold voice, "Immortal, what are you doing here?" After the immortal's Dharma image appeared, he just glanced at the Void Lord casually, and then directly said to Lin An, "That human strongman. I have a suggestion." In just a few minutes, Lin An had repaired the cracks on the white sword. He held the white sword and nodded slightly. "Speak." At this time, the immortal officially looked at the Void Lord, and the sight in his eyes was filled with a hint of playfulness. He raised one hand and pointed at the Void Lord from a distance. At the same time, he chuckled and said to Lin An, "Now you and I will join forces. How about killing the Void Lord here?" Although the immortal's voice was not loud when he said this, "Who is the Void Lord?" When the immortal proposed this, he had already heard these two sentences. His brows furrowed even tighter, and veins popped out from his forehead. If the two of them join forces, for me, it would be a very bad thing. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 337. And at this moment, Lin An, who heard the immortal's words, looked at the immortal not far away from him with his two emotionless eyes. Lin An's eyes were very dull. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Lin An's heart did not waver at all. He was not tempted by the tempting-sounding condition of being able to kill the Lord of the Void here. There is no one who knows anything about such a person who suddenly appeared here. Lin would never believe it. After staring at the immortal for a few seconds, Lin An asked in a cold tone, "Why should I join forces with you to kill him?" The immortal's Dharma immediately smiled and replied, "For existences of our level, it is difficult to kill the opponent alone. Even if we kill the opponent, we will be in crisis. But if two people join forces to deal with the other, things will become easier. Even if you have to pay some price in the end, those prices are only small prices." The immortal's tone when he said these words was very sincere, and his expression also looked full of sincerity. But Lin didn't believe what the immortal said at all. How could the words of an old monster who had lived for so many years be true? What's more, what appears here is just a form of the immortal. Moreover, Lin En had no intention of killing the Void Lord. He has no idea what the current situation on Earth is like. Under such circumstances, he will not take action rashly to change the current situation of the Earth. If the Void Lord is killed here, the pattern of the Earth will definitely change again. At this time, the Void Monarch was ready to escape at any time. Once Lin En had the intention to agree, he would leave as quickly as possible. He was also unsure in his heart whether Lin would join forces with the immortal. This is something that affects the whole body. Once he is killed, Lin and the immortal's dharma will also be seriously injured. And by that time, the other two beings on Earth will never let go of this excellent opportunity. Lin will definitely die too. The eyes of the immortal and the Void Lord were all set on Lin En. But in the expectant gazes of the two of them, a sneer appeared on Lin En's face. He first glanced at the Void Lord with cold eyes, and then looked at the immortal. If I, Lin, want to kill him, why do I need your help? The immortal was at a loss for a moment. He thought about Lin En's two answers of acceptance and rejection, but he never thought that Lin En would actually say such a thing. His appearance froze in place for an instant. This. What? Why did he say that? With such strength, he should be very aware of the existence of this level. How tricky it is. Suddenly, the immortal thought of a terrible possibility. Could it be? Just now he was fighting the Void Lord. Didn't you use all your strength? When he thought of this possibility, immortal Dharma Siang hurriedly looked at Lin En seriously. Lin En's calm and confident look made him feel that the possibility was very high. Silence. The universe fell into silence. After the immortal's Dharma was silent for a full minute, he looked at Lin En with deep meaning and said in a solemn tone. That's it? Since you refused, then I won't force it. After saying that, the image of the immortal floated in the universe and approached the earth. Originally, he was thinking that if he could not unite with Lin En to kill the Void Lord, then he would unite with the Void Lord to kill Lin En. But now he was shaken. Lin En's indifferent look made him unable to figure out Lin En's strength for a while. At the same time, the Lord of the Void breathed a sigh of relief, but he felt very aggrieved in his heart. Not only did it fail to achieve its goal, it actually suffered a big loss. After the Void Lord took a deep look at Lin En, he was about to turn around and leave. He knew very well that it had become impossible to kill the indigenous people in this era. But just when the two of them were about to return to Earth again, Lin En, standing at the border of the Kyushu territory, finally spoke again. Stop. Did I let you go? The immortal's appearance and the advancing body of the Lord of the Void then stopped. The two of them turned their heads and looked at Lin En with solemn eyes. What do you want to do? The Void Lord asked. He had already made a decision. If Lin insisted on taking action, he would not mind joining forces with the immortal. The same idea applies to the form of the immortal. Since he has no way to unite with Lin to kill the Void Lord, then he wouldn't mind, and if forced to do so, he would join forces with the Void Lord to kill Lin. And just when the two of them were ready to join forces, the heavenly will in Lin En's body turned, and the two eyes, one purple and one black, shone brightly. His cold voice resounded throughout the universe. The earth is your territory, and the universe is my territory. Starting from today, whenever something like today happens again, I will regard that as an invasion of my territory and directly destroy it. Lin En's voice was cold and ruthless. His words were a warning to those powerful giants of the times on earth. At this moment, the faces of the Lord of the Void and the immortal Dharma became gloomy. However, neither of them said anything. They just looked at Lin meaningfully for a few seconds, then turned around and returned to the earth that temporarily belonged to their leadership. At the same time, Lin An's declaration was also heard by all the era giants on the earth. Immediately afterwards, these giants of the era all fell into silence. After being silent for a long time, these giants of the era spoke with sighs one by one. Just follow what he said. Don't leave the earth and enter the universe at will in the future. Otherwise the consequences will be serious. Judging from the strength he has shown now, he is qualified to say this. But it doesn't have much impact on us. Our main battlefield is still the earth. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Does one person dominate the entire universe? I haven't seen such a character for a long time. That is, from this moment on, Lin An's name and the floating Kyushu domain in the universe spread throughout the entire earth. All beings on the earth regard the Kyushu region in the sky as the fifth most forbidden land besides the places where the four ancient forces are located. And Lin An was even called the fifth monarch. Emperor Lin. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 338. The four great monarchs on earth are the Lord of the Void, the Immortal, the God of Destiny, and the Priest. Two of them, and some level of contact with Lin. After experiencing the attempt to destroy the Kyushu territory, all the major forces on the earth decided not to provoke Lin An for the time being. They had already obtained their acknowledgement that he was qualified to be on an equal footing with them. At the same time, Lin An had already led the fairy army and Kyushu guards to annihilate all the four giant crocodiles and the huge legion under the Void Lord. Leaving the Dark Universe and arriving in the Kyushu territory, the moment everyone entered, the laws of space surged in Lin An's body. The broken space barrier at the edge of the 9 provinces territory was once again completely repaired. With the protection of this space barrier, the Kyushu territory was once again isolated from the outside world. A large part of the residents of Kyushu territory were standing on various streets at this moment, looking up at the starry sky above their heads. The war just now was witnessed by all the residents of the 9 provinces territory. At this moment, they were looking at Lin An, who was slowly descending from the sky, and their eyes were filled with fiery admiration. Master Lin saved us again. Thank you very much, Master Lin. It's nice to have Lady Lin here. They knew very well that if Lin An did not appear with these 2 armies, then the entire Kyushu region would become hell. No one can survive. Lin An listened to the cheers of the crowd below and just nodded slightly. Then he waved his left hand gently, and he and the 2 armies disappeared from everyone's sight. When they appeared again, they were already in the place where they had practiced for 3 years. Lin An looked at Helen and Dao Yi standing in front of him, stretched out his hand and patted them lightly on the shoulders. Thank you for your hard work these past 3 years. Your performance today was very good. Helen's and Dao Yi's eyes were filled with excitement, and their faces became rosy. Immediately afterwards, Helen and Dao Yi immediately knelt on one knee on the ground, looking under their heads towards the ground. He spoke with joy in his tone. Thanks to Chief Lin. We are where we are today because of you. Lin An looked at Helen and Dao Yi, and the corners of his serious mouth could not help but raise a curve. With a slight hook of his fingers, Helen and Dao Yi, who were kneeling on the ground, stood up uncontrollably. At the same time, Lin's voice began to ring in their ears. You must continue to practice and become stronger in the future. I will leave Kyushu territory for a while. During this period of time, the security of the Juzhu territory depends on you and Chen Daoming. Dao Yi and Helen subconsciously turned their heads and looked at each other. They both saw a strong look of determination in their eyes. Don't worry, leave it to us, Chief Lin. After receiving affirmative answers from Helen and Dao Yi, Lin An left from here. At the top of the Tree of Life, Lin An came here after leaving the training place of Helen and others. At this moment, he was the only one here. Chen Daoming, King Ian, and others were all busy in the Juzhu territory. In the past 3 years, King Ian, Banmen, and Kimeng have all grown up a lot. The 3 of them want to help Lin An share some of the pressure. He voluntarily joined Chen Daoming's command and was busy with various affairs in the Kyushu domain. The somewhat old face of the Tree of Life appeared next to Lin En again. The moment she saw Lin En, Tree of Life's eyes couldn't help but glazed over, and an inexplicable sense of respect appeared in her mind. The Tree of Life is now completely unable to see through Lin. She looks at Lin as if she is looking at a mass of fog. She looked at Lin En deeply, and said with a sigh, "Lin, long time no see. It's just 3 years since we last met. Lin's growth is so huge. Like a child. Become an adult." Lin En nodded slightly towards the Tree of Life and answered, "Haven't seen you for a long time." After saying that, Lin En sat cross-legged on the trunk of the Tree of Life and spoke again. "I will leave Kyushu territory for a while." The Tree of Life was not surprised. "Are you going back to the Earth?" Lin En nodded slightly and slowly said, "It's been 3 years since we left Earth. The Earth has now become more stable, and its structure has also undergone tremendous changes. And we who stay in the Kyushu domain have no idea what the Earth looks like now. In order to grasp the entire situation, I have to enter the Earth. Understand the current situation of the Earth clearly." The Tree of Life naturally saw the battle that just happened in the universe. When she heard what Lin En was going to do, she immediately thought of one thing. "But if you enter the Earth rashly, you will definitely attract the attention of those hegemons. You know, your every move now represents the entire Josu domain." Lin En nodded in agreement. "You are right. So this time I will enter the Earth in a different appearance. At the same time, I will leave a Dharma image, sitting at the top of Josu domain, so that those tyrants on the Earth can see it." The Tree of Life understood, and she didn't say anything else, just stayed quietly beside Lin En. And at this time, Lin En, who was sitting cross-legged, slowly closed his eyes. In his mind, he mobilized the huge resources in the fairy spirit era. It was easy to find the method of creating Dharma images. Then Lin En began to practice this method. In a blink of an eye, a day passed, and Lin En also sat cross-legged at the top of the Tree of Life for a whole day. A gust of wind blew, and countless leaves fell down. Lin En, who had his eyes closed, also opened his eyes at this time. At the same time, a Dharma image appeared from his body behind him. The appearance of the Dharma image is exactly the same as Lin En's, and the eyes are exactly the same as Lin En's, one is purple and the other is black. After the Dharma image appeared, it sat cross-legged in the air like Lin En. Then it began to expand continuously. 10 meters, 100 meters, 1000 meters, 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters. After Lin En's Dharma image expanded to a great extent, the violent expansion was completely stopped. After the expansion stopped, Lin En's Dharma image broke away from the Josu domain and sat cross-legged in the void in the universe. Those two eyes like the sun looked at the earth without any emotion. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 339. And that's when Lin En's appearance, those ruthless eyes, stared at the earth. All the era giants on the earth have also sensed this indifferent gaze, which is like the way of heaven. The giants of these eras all raised their heads at this moment and looked towards the direction of the Kyushu territory. At this glance, they saw Lin En's huge Dharma image sitting cross-legged at the top of the 9 provinces territory. Immediately, the giant crocodiles of the old era couldn't help but said, "That's Emperor Lin's Dharma. Sure enough, his strength is no less than that of the Void Lord and the others. Just seeing Emperor Lin's Dharma form has already made me feel waves of tremendous pressure. If Emperor Lin had been born millions of years earlier, the entire era would have been rewritten by him. The giants of these times know very well why Lin En would do such a thing. It was completely intentional. The purpose is to shock them and make them always remember that Lin En exists in the Kyushu territory. Once they do something, they will face Lin's anger. Those who were still thinking about the Kyushu region have now completely given up their bad thoughts. In the Void Palace, the Lord of the Void, who was sitting on the throne of the Void, looked towards the huge Dharma image belonging to Lin En above the 9 provinces territory with his 2 pupils still showing bloodshot eyes. In an instant, the bloodshot eyes in his pupils became more dense, and even his brows were frowned, with wrinkles appearing. He actually has a Dharma image. How so? Obviously when he fought with him yesterday, there was no power fluctuation in his body at all. But only 1 day has passed. He has the Dharma. And it's such a powerful Dharma image. Ga. 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 The Void Lord's 2 palms clenched tightly, and the bones made a rattling sound. Damn it! He became angrier in his heart. The stronger Lin En became, the harder it would be for him to destroy the Kyushu territory. Huh. It's just a human race. Although I can't deal with the human race outside the Earth. But in today's Earth, there are still humans. Thinking of this, the Void Lord suddenly stood up from the Void Throne, and his eyes slowly returned from the sitting cross-legged Lin En Faxiang at the top of the 9 provinces territory. Subsequently, a large number of Void demons poured into the Void Palace. Lin En, who was sitting cross-legged on the branches of the world, withdrew from the state of cultivation. He stood up, raised his head and looked at his Dharma image. With this Dharma, those guys on Earth will not act rashly for a while. And this period of time has been enough for me to figure out what kind of situation the Earth is in now. Looking back, Lin closed his eyes again. While he was practicing the huge Dharma form, he also practiced a technique called disguise. The next moment, Lin En's face began to change, his facial features became much more weathered, and his body bones also became larger. The only thing that hasn't changed is Lin En's eyes. After Lin En used the disguise technique, he transformed into the image of a vicissitudes of life knight. At this time, Lin En turned his head and looked towards the tree of life. I'm going to sneak into the earth now. Don't reveal my whereabouts to anyone. If anyone asks, just say that I went to retreat. The tree of life, which has lived for so many years, naturally knows how important what Lin En wants to do is. I see. Lin nodded slightly. Immediately afterwards, the light flashed in those 2 eyes, and the heavenly wheel in the body rotated. At this moment, he exerted the power of space law to the extreme. The area around the tree of life fell into distortion in an instant, and the sky here was like a dream, like clouds and fog. At the same time, a space crack appeared. Lin En stepped into the space crack in 1 step. After a few seconds passed, the distorted and illusory sky returned to normal, and Lin, who had changed his appearance, completely disappeared from the tree of life. At the same time, in the earth, there is a towering mountain cliff that is rarely visited by people. Click. The space here suddenly shattered, and a hole of about 5 meters appeared. Lin En's figure walked out of this shattered hole. The moment he came out, Lin's attention wandered away and he began to perceive everything around him. After a long time, Lin En dispersed his perception. There is no spiritual power spreading towards this place. It seems that my whereabouts have not been exposed. Lin En used the law of space without reservation this time in order to enter the earth quietly. But this time it turned out that he succeeded. Only then did Lin En look toward the distance. The earth he saw was no longer the earth he knew. Everything he knew was gone. It's only been 3 years. It already looks like it has gone through a lot of changes. After sighing softly, Lin En flew into the air and left here. Not far from Lin En, there was a big siege. Thousands of void demons were surrounding a dozen humans in the center. These void demons all had cruel and playful smiles on their faces. It seemed that the dozen humans surrounded by them were just a group of playthings. Lin An's flying figure in the air could not help but stop after seeing the scene below. He began to look at the dozen people, but when he saw a woman in red clothes and with an extremely outstanding appearance in the center of the 10 people, a rare surprise appeared on his calm eyes. This woman. And her. As if. The sealed memory in Lin An's heart was opened in an instant, and the dream that lasted for 3,000 years once again appeared vividly in her mind. And in his dream, the woman he met at the beginning of the big dream occupied a large part. At this moment, the woman in red and the woman in the dream slowly overlapped together. These two women look so similar. At this moment when Lin An was slightly stunned, the red-dressed woman below him was surrounded by thousands of void demons. Her beautiful eyebrows were tightly knitted, and she asked the void demons with a somewhat cold tone. "We have no grudges with the Void Lord. Why did you suddenly attack us? I can see the laws of things." Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 340. The leading demon of the Void Demon clan looked at the woman in red, his scarlet eyes full of murderous intent, and he showed his sharp fangs with pieces of flesh and blood. "Does the strong need a reason to kill the weak?" The leading demon laughed grimly. "Besides, who said you have no grudges against the Lord Monarch?" The red-clothed woman frowned more and more, and she couldn't remember when they had a conflict with the Lord Monarch of the Void. At this moment, the leading demon spoke arrogantly again. "Lord Monarch has ordered you to be killed." The leading demon raised a hand and pointed his finger in the direction of the Juzhu domain. "If you want to blame someone, blame Lindy, the 5th emperor of your human race. Who made him angry with Lord Monarch?" At this time, the red-clothed woman completely understood the reason why they suffered such an inexplicable attack. It turned out that it was just because of the Lord Monarch's anger. Lin En, who was lurking in the sky, also heard this reason. In his eyes, a burst of murderous intent appeared in an instant. "The reason is because of me. Lord of the Void. I'll deal with you later." After learning the reason, Lin En prepared to kill these thousands of void demons. But before that, he planned to see what the strength of these humans who survived from the old times was like. And at this moment, the battle between the two sides broke out. These dozen human beings and the void demons fought together. The red-clothed woman held a long sword, and when the long sword was swung, she actually cut out countless sword shadows. And her strength has reached the level of demigod. The strength of other people around her is infinitely close to demigod. Various attacks emerged in this world. But the strength of those void demons is not weak, and in terms of number, they have a great advantage. Claws, fangs, and dark power. The demons' attacks surged like waves. On average, one person had to face hundreds of demons. In such a situation, the red-dressed woman and others quickly fell into a disadvantage. Wounds appeared on their bodies, and the weapons they originally held in their hands could no longer be held tightly. The strength of the demigod level was no longer among the top in this era. At the same time, Lin En, who was in the sky, raised his eyebrows slightly. "It seems that this is the end." The leading demon raised a claw, and the sharp nails like blades grew rapidly. In just a breath, the nails grew to a full meter long. "Go to hell, human. Wait for your Lindy in hell." The next moment, the leading demon's claw stabbed towards the heart of the red-dressed woman. But at this moment, a sharp white sword light slashed directly from the sky. Ka! Its blade-like nails shattered into countless debris in an instant. "Who is it?" The leading demon immediately looked up at the sky, and in his sight, Lin An's figure quickly fell down. Ta! Lin An's feet stepped on the solid ground again. The leading demon looked at Lin An who appeared in front of him, and a flash of anger flashed in his eyes. "Human race. Are you looking for death?" Lin An ignored the leading demon, but looked at the familiar red-dressed woman behind him. He asked softly, "Are you okay?" The red-dressed woman did not expect this to happen, but she reacted quickly. A trace of anxiety quickly appeared on her face, and she said in a hurried tone, "Get out of here. Otherwise you will die here too. These demons are too strong." Lin An's current appearance can only give people an ordinary impression. So when the red-dressed woman saw Lin An for the first time, she subconsciously thought that Lin An was definitely not a match for so many void demons. At this time, the leading demon also said, "Go to hell." Thousands of void demons raised their claws and were ready to kill all these humans here. "It's over." The red-dressed woman cried out, and she looked at Lin An with deep guilt in her eyes. If it weren't for Lin An's rescue just now, Lin An wouldn't have faced such a dilemma. Lin An looked at these thousands of void demons with bloodthirsty murderous intent on their faces, and slowly raised the white sword in his hand. Sharp law. Space law. The power of the two laws covered the white sword body, and a faint light bloomed on the white sword. The next moment, Lin An waved the white sword and casually slashed forward. Clang! A white sword light that spread tens of thousands of meters emerged, and the body of every void demon was slashed by this white sword light. And every void demon that was cut by the white sword light would instantly break into two halves. Boom! 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 Most of the surrounding space was shattered, constantly collapsing and making a huge noise. The bodies of the void demons were all swallowed up by the collapsed space. A few seconds later, the white sword light dissipated, and the damaged space around them returned to its original state. The white sword that Lin An had raised was slowly put away by Lin An again. The woman in red sat on the ground, and her two watery eyes, which originally had a look of unwilling regret, now showed a look of disbelief. Her small red lips could not help but open, and she raised a hand and covered her mouth tightly. Even the mind of the woman in red fell into a blank situation at this moment. He. Actually. So powerful. How is it possible? He clearly just slashed out a sword casually. But those void demons, were all killed. One sword. It was just one sword. His strength. What realm did he reach? Except for the woman in red, the other humans who were saved by Lin An's sword now looked at Lin An. Everyone subconsciously held their breath, not even daring to breathe. Finally, the woman in red was the first to react. She exerted force on her legs and stood up from the ground. She looked at Lin An's tall back, took a deep breath, and said with gratitude, "Thank you for saving us." Lin An turned his head, glanced at the woman in red, and said, "No need. I just don't like these demons." Lin An didn't intend to reveal his identity. At this time, the woman blinked her eyes slightly and asked softly, "What is your name?" She wanted to see if Lin An was a strong man among the human race that she had heard of. The next moment, Lin An spoke calmly. "My name is Lin. Warm Ti."